Hello. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. We are going to jump straight into it. Because, let me see. I didn't turn my thing on here. Let's see. There we go. We're going to jump straight into it here because I got a lot of videos to show. I figured I'd try to do a live today. And so let's get going here. So let's see here. Obviously talk about the controversy over black pastors and all that kind of good stuff. And these folks that are supporting Charlie Kirk and what's going on with that and all that. So let's do this video here. Let's see, black pastors. Let's see. Actually, that's not what I want to do. Can't watch later. Yeah, watch later. Share. We'll do this in here. Let's see here. I do not know what's going on with my computer and all that. So, all right. So let's do it here. I don't know this brother. Why I support Charlie Kirk as a black man in America. So let's go. I don't know who is this brother actually. Who is he? Thoughts to Reality. I think it's pretty much a brand new channel. Why I support Charlie Kirk as a black man in America. Let's find out what this brother's got to say.
Ruffle some feathers, but who cares? This is the internet. We have a tendency of speaking our minds, and I have been around long enough to know no matter what you do or what you say, somebody is not going to like you for whatever reason, okay? I want to talk about my man, Charlie Kirk, and why I support him and why I stand for him and will continue to pray for his family as a black man. Now, I had to add that part in there because
I don't know this brother. Obviously, so he's talking about Charlie Kirk. What's going on with him? What his thoughts are, opinions are about that, and so let me see here. I wanted to make this about pastors. He's obviously not going to be talking about pastors. I sped it up a little bit here, but he's calling my man and all that. So again, when we talk about Charlie Kirk, he was obviously a controversial figure, and I'm not trying to disparage him or kick dirt on his grave or anything like that. But just the thought process about who this brother is and the things that he stood for and what he was saying about, when you attack black women, and he attacked certain black women and said that they didn't have the brain processing power and all this kind of stuff, and you're going to support that kind of stuff, and any attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, and you start talking about people's intelligence and this, that, and the other, it becomes problematic for me. It becomes problematic.
Social media and the internet will try to convince a lot of you out there that if you support Charlie Kirk, you must be a Trump supporter, you must be racist, you must be white. When in actuality, social media and the internet does not speak for everybody. and most important of all, social media and the internet does not speak for every Black American. Darn sure doesn't speak for me. Now, let me give you a little bit of rundown on me before I continue with this video. I have always been the type of person to march to my own beat. I've never fallen into the crowds. I've never done the typical things. I was always outcast, in my younger years for not being dark enough. And interestingly enough, the darker, blacks were always giving me a hard time. Yellow boy, unbaked cookie. I've heard a lot of different things. Half breed, I've heard just a lot. So
He's heard a number of things. It sounds to me, just from the general beginning of this, his brother has a lot of healing to do from his past traumas, and certainly we all got to deal with this whole colorism thing. Unbaked cookie, that's a new one for me. So
yeah, um, had to deal with all of that growing up. Needless to say, it caused me to have a bit of a different logic and think a little bit differently than a lot of people and look at the world from a different lens because I knew something was wrong at a young age. And even now, um, I raise my kids in a manner to where we don't look at color, but we listen to reason. We practice logical tactics, and we don't just go off of our emotions. We don't go off of the color of skin. We don't go off of internet. We go off of what we know and what we hear. Okay, that is how we live our life. That is how we make our decisions, and that is how we draw our conclusions in my home. Okay, so let's get on to the topic. Why do I support Charlie Kirk? I have watched many debates in its context, in its entirety, not just a 10-second snippet or a 10-second clip. We're not doing that. You have a bad habit of doing that, taking a little bit of something and running with it and saying that it's something else, twisting it to fit your narrative. I've listened to a lot of his conversations with college students, Black, white, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. I've listened to them all. Not all, but I've listened to a lot. Enough. I've done my research. And I do not believe that this man was a racist. I don't see it. For those of you who say that he was and you're Black, you need to come at me a little bit more than with a clip of him saying something out of context to prove that he was a racist, because telling the truth about particular communities is
my challenge, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, is when you look at this stuff in context. What does that mean? I know what it means, but from front to back, soup to nuts, beginning to end, a particular item. I've watched. I don't know if I watched a full hour and a half or whatever he has, but I certainly watched enough of it to understand the context, and I still maintain that he was this way. Now, I didn't cut up any clips, and I certainly don't plan to cut up any clips to make my point here. But I would challenge anyone to say, okay, well, what was the thing that he said that was not racist, about Black women's intelligence in particular, the Black flight attendants? Why is he saying all that type of stuff, right?
not racist. The people that are screaming that are individuals who are getting in their feelings and who don't want to admit, man, this guy's right. He's telling the truth, because data doesn't lie. Statistics, they don't lie. And when you're not used to hearing the truth, and he did put it in a very unique way, he gave it to you straight with no chaser, it can hurt. It can sting a bit. It can make you feel some type of way. And the Black community, I'm just being real because I come from it, we don't like any type of accountability. We don't like to hear the truth.
I don't know where he's getting. I don't know where he's getting this from, but I know certain. We talk about what the needs are of the Black community all the time. So I don't know what's up with that.
Because it does hurt. It does sting. Now you can get, if that makes you upset and that makes you angry, then I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. But again, I grew up in it. I grew up around it. I've witnessed it. I've practiced it in my younger years. So I know that it's true. That accountability is something that is not practiced in the Black community. I wish it was. I would love to see it because I'm so tired of our younger Black.
Now, is he practicing exactly what he's talking about in the Black community? He's making broad, sweeping generalizations. Is he doing that right now? Making broad generalizations.
Males going to jail for stupid stuff. I'm so tired of our younger Black females, sleeping with these men who really have no type of sense for their future. They're not trying to do anything to better the community. They're just thinking about themselves. And it's just, I wish that it was better, but that's a whole nother conversation in itself. Let's stick to Charlie. This was a man who practiced Christianity, conservative views, which are views that do line up with myself.
Is Christianity some type of get out of jail free card? Is Christianity, claiming to be a Christian, some type of get out of jail free card that it doesn't matter what someone says because you align up with their conservative values, whatever that would mean to the person? Because I would ask, what are the person's trying to conserve? What is it you're trying to keep going? I would ask that question. What is it you want to keep going? It's okay to believe in strong family values, maybe even call them traditional values, but what are those conservative values? What are those supposed to be keeping up?
Because I don't dibble and dabble into politics a lot, but my beliefs do line up. My Christian beliefs do line up with conservative views, and that's just the way that I lean. I don't lean to the left. I don't lean liberal. I just don't. A lot of what they believe in and a lot of what they practice goes against my personal beliefs. But now we're at a point in time where if you say that, people, they get so pissed off and so angry to call you every name in the book, and now losing your life because of a different point of view.
I think there's a lot of hyperbole going on here. I don't know where this brother lives at. He didn't say that, but I mean, where is this going on at where people are calling you names because of what you believe? And again, this may be a regional thing, but it's certainly not something that I experienced.
I stand with Charlie because this man, he stood on what it was he believed in. He stood on his business. He stood his ground, and came with receipts, and came with facts, and came with truth. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like people on the left to kick and scream and get angry, right? When they hear something that goes against what it is they believe in, that goes against their narrative. There's something that doesn't support what it is they're going for. That there's anger, there's rage, there's disarray, there's now taking people out. That's at the point that we're at right now.
Again, more hyperbole. I mean, there are Christian nationalists who have taken people out. And in fact, the latest shooting at a facility, ICE facility in Dallas, may have been another supremacist shooter who was pro MAGA and all that. So you can't just we're throwing a lot of stuff out here, right? With a lot of detail and specifics.
I can get behind somebody who's not afraid of what the masses will say. I can get behind somebody that's not afraid of pushback. I can get behind somebody that stands on truth and that does not buckle for the culture, that does not buckle under the pressure, that doesn't do any of that stuff, but just stands rooted in what it is they believe. I can get behind somebody like that. You know what I mean? And once again, I think the biggest reason that I support him and I get behind him is the reaction that I have witnessed from people who celebrate his death, who talk down on what he stood for, who have no remorse or sympathy for his family. And to me, that is inhumane. That's evil, folks. That is pure evil and wicked. And to me, there's no way in the world that I could possibly get behind people who treat humans like that, regardless of how you felt about the person, okay? We're not talking about somebody who was a criminal. We're not talking about somebody who went out here causing trouble in society. We're not talking about somebody who was a problem.
We're talking about somebody who said things about Black women in particular, who called members of the LGBT. I recognize this is not his philosophy, but he called these types of people names, denigrated, I would say, Black folks in particular, immigrants. I think that all that was problematic. I think all that was problematic. We can have differences of opinion, but when you start calling people names and taking it personal, saying that the Civil Rights Act largely was a mistake. He said there were just some good parts to it. Okay, man. I mean, you know, I can't rock with that. I can't rock with that.
We're talking about an individual who had an opinion, who stood firmly on his beliefs, and was very educated in that, and who always came with the logic and the reasoning and the receipts, and who just was always well prepared for.
Clearly, you didn't see his debate against on Jubilee. You didn't see his debate in not Harvard. What's that place? Was it Westminster? And the one he did in the UK, I believe it was in the UK. Clearly, you didn't see any of those debates where people just ate his lunch. Didn't see him
answer, and who stood on it with confidence too. You gotta give it to him. You know, anybody that stands on what they believe with confidence, and that does not have to call names, and that does not have to get violent and angry, that's a person of reason that you can listen to, and that is the reason why I support him. I will never support people who choose to act in violence. I will never support people who choose to call you names. I will never support people who choose to just get irrational. Something said that doesn't support their narrative. Like to say, hey, we agree to disagree. That's not even practiced anymore, folks. People don't agree to disagree. They don't. It's now I don't agree with you. I hate you. I want you unalived. That is where we are right now. Okay, at least on one side of the pendulum.
All right, that's enough of that, man. I just can't rock with this dude. You know, there is it too much of this? Yeah, but I want to hear someone kind of break down exactly what the man said that you agree with. I mean, he probably can't do it in a car video, but maybe we'll try another lady here. I can't do it in a car video, but maybe, you know, I want to hear somebody break down exactly what the man said that you thought was right and okay.
Today, I am choosing to call out the error of the Black church. The Black church is in error, and it has been in error for a very, very long time.
And this is Center for Biblical Unity. Center for Biblical Unity, Charlie Kirk, Racism and the Black Church, a Biblical Response. All right, maybe she has a little bit better information to give us here. So I don't know why I hate these introductions. I know it's popular now, but they just bother me.
To quickly just talk about some of the response that I am seeing to Charlie Kirk's death from the Black community or by the Black community. Now, I have wanted to make this video for the last few days, and I've really held off because as I would talk to friends, they were like, no, everybody's talking about Charlie Kirk's death and everybody's being, you know, really just mean and despicable and, you know, horrible in regards to their comments. It's coming from all ethnicities. And I think there's a valid point to that. I think that there are many people of varying ethnicities, cultures, backgrounds that are saying some really horrible things about Charlie Kirk. And yet, maybe it's because I'm Black, maybe it's because of the algorithm and the way that my feed is set up, but a lot of what I am seeing really comes from Black progressives and Black leftists who would say that they are Christian. As I am waking up and seeing things in my feed, I'm seeing things like the video.
What does it mean to be Christian? What is it? I mean, I like for them to break this down a little bit more. What does that mean?
I'm about to play right now. So watch this.
Okay.
Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half-staff calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. And hearing people with selective rage who were mad about Charlie Kirk, but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home.
I watched this before. I didn't catch it. He said, damn. The church I grew up in, you couldn't say that kind of stuff. So I don't know what's going on in Black church here.
Tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life. I am sorry But there's nowhere in Bible where we are taught to honor evil. And how you die does not redeem how you lived. You do not become a hero in your death when you are a weapon of the enemy in your life. I can abhor the violence that took your life, but I don't have to celebrate how you chose to live. I am overwhelmed.
That makes two of us who are overwhelmed. So let's talk about, some of the things that he said. Charlie was a racist. Well, if we kind of unpack the idea of racism and what it means to be a racist, one of the things that we need to look at is the idea that he is not fighting for policies that really stand for marginalized people or Black people specifically. If you look at how Ibram Kendi defines anti-racism versus, being a racist, if you are not fighting for the policies or the betterment of Black people, then you are participating in racist ways. If you look at
I wouldn't agree with Ibram Kendi's definition of that. I wouldn't. I don't think just because you're fighting against it. I think that you have to be fighting for something in order to be that thing. Standing on the ground in neutral ground, it can be a slippery slope and can be argued. However, just because he says that, it doesn't mean somebody has to go out there and march and whatever. So I would think I would disagree with that, but let's continue.
The definition from 1972 from Patricia Biddle-Padva and her definition of prejudice plus power. What this pastor is saying is that Charlie Kirk, not standing for how he sees Black lives should be celebrated, Charlie Kirk was playing out prejudice, but also living in his power as a white man, as a white Christian man, a white heterosexual man, however you want to put it. He is participating in racism from that position. Now, I don't agree with that definition. I would not call Charlie Kirk a racist. I would not call him a racist for several reasons. But one of the things that I am...
Okay, what would be your definition of a racist, I guess, is the question.
Looking at and hearing this guy's, rhetoric, the first thing that I take away is that this is the Black church. This is the position of the Black church. The Black church is married to social justice. They are married to Black liberation theology. And now just because this guy didn't say, some of the natural tenets that are, embedded within Black liberation theology, I will say the spirit of what he is saying does fit the narrative. The idea that everything we should do should be to work to liberate the Black person, because the Black...
Okay. What are you calling Black liberation theology? I mean, I'd like a definition of that particular term. What is Black liberation theology? Her understanding of it.
Black person suffers from marginalization and oppression. As long as there are Black disparities within our society, and Kendi, I believe, also, pushes toward this narrative, the disparities among Black people in our nation. There's more Black people in jail than there are white people. Black people don't have...
That's not true.
the same earning income or the same amount of wealth as white people. Well,
okay, why is that?
That lets you know that there's racism at play in our society. Now, I don't believe that, but the Black church historically has held on to those things. They have held on to Black liberation theology and social justice ideology. The fact,
and thus you are able to do more than become a school teacher, work in the fields, or be subject to the whims and wills of some white male. That's Black liberation theology, to be set free from these types of ideas. So again, I'm curious as to what her issues with it is. And yes, Black social justice in moving the goalpost forward has always been, and always probably will be, important for ideas to move forward and to be progressive.
The idea that Black people are oppressed and we are always to be working for the liberation of Black people. Social justice ideology comes along and says, this is how you fight for Black people. When he says that Charlie Kirk came along to and sowed seeds of division and hate, it is hateful to continue to argue for the oppression of a group of people. That is their position. That Charlie Kirk was not advocating the liberation of Black people. Why was he not advocating the liberation of Black people? Because he stood against DEI, because he called people to marry, because he called out Black fathers, because he said that people should, earn things based on merit.
Okay. So we are having an issue with data, facts, statistics, and that is part of the problem concerning what is going on here. I'm going to have a conversation. I'm slated to have a conversation with a lady by the name of Dr. Chiaku Hansen. And I hope to get into the data, facts, and statistics about numbers in this, that, and the other, because, calling out Black fathers. Well, we know that 54% of Black men are in the middle class. We know the majority of Black fathers, even if they don't live in the homes, which we all advocate for, are still the most involved fathers of all racial ethnic groups. So, exactly what is it that we're talking about? We also know that Black men are the most responsible when it comes to condom use. So we also know that there's more Black men who are married than there are Black women. Let me say that again. There are more Black men who are married, even though there are more Black women, period. There's 2 million more Black women, but there's still more married Black men than there are Black women who are married. So why is that? Who is it who is dedicated to the uplifting of the community? So these types of tropes are what Charlie Kirk played in. He talked about, half of the men in one of the clips that I did see. Again, I agree, you got to take things in context. One of the clips that I saw that Charlie Kirk said is that Black men in particular were half of the people in prison. That's never been true. Even at the height of the prison industrial complex, 2001, 2002, it was still only 38 to 39% of the prisons were filled with Black men. Now that's way too many considering, Black people. That's way too many considering that we are 13% of the population, and that's something we got to do something about. But also let's also keep in mind of the over policing of our communities and the targeting of our communities, and let's also not forget the exonerations that have taken place. Something like 60 to 70% of the exonerations that have occurred have been of who? Black people, and I think Black men in particular. So there has been a dedicated effort to sabotage and to denigrate Black men, which I think continues on until this day.
I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk said everything perfectly and that he didn't get things wrong, but I would say by and large, his stances were biblical positions. He would not advocate for the LGBTQ plus. He didn't advocate for BLM. He stood on biblical.
Why? What? Because BLM said the father had not BLM made that statement in their mission statement about subverting the traditional family, or however it was worded. What was wrong with the idea, the concept of BLM? We get the corruption that was going on, the buying of homes, the millions of dollars that went into the personal pockets of people. No issue there, but the spirit of it is what I'm talking about. What was wrong with that?
Principles, and then encouraged all people to participate that way. One of the things that really strikes me as I'm listening, not just to this guy, but to many people who are making these Charlie was a racist, Charlie, hated Black people, all of these kind of videos, it is this idea of fearing racism. The idea that being a racist is the worst thing that you can do, and that racism is the worst evil there is. And so now not only are we going to...
That's an interesting concept. I wouldn't say that it's the most evil that you can be or do or whatever, but I think that the problem is that it leads to so many more downfalls. Now, some would say capitalism is the father of racism. I'm not going to disagree with that, father, mother, or whatever. I'm not going to disagree with that. But when you have racism, then you are prone to violence. When you have racist intentions, you're prone to discriminate. And if you discriminate, you can exclude people from jobs and positions and promotions, and you can harm them financially, which causes them to move backwards in society, which then would or stagnate their growth in society. And therefore, if you stagnate their growth in society, then their children will grow up a certain way. And now we know that hypertension and other various forms of ailments are all linked to racism. So racism is a serious evil. Can the roots also be said to be capitalism? I'm not going to argue about that. Sure. But still, there are some people who just won't hire you because you're Black, because you're Mexican, because you're a woman, etc. And so therefore, they put your whole family at risk and stop them in a certain place because of the color of their skin. I think that that's an issue.
not necessarily, I would say, celebrate, like wave my flag and dance on his grave, although I do think some would do that. What I'm seeing is this idea of racism. You should fear this idea of racism. You never want to participate and be a racist, because if you are a racist like this is how we're going to treat you as well. And so what it does is it trains people on how to respond to things that culture sees as racist. It also helps us understand, well, I don't want people to see me as a racist. And because I don't want people to see me as a racist, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, or I'm not going to speak out against all of these things. I'm not going to say anything because it's just too divisive. People will think that I'm participating in racism. They're training us how to respond. But we don't actually have to respond that way. You don't have to be trained and built up in that. You can actually continue to use your voice and allow people to call you a racist. Oh, well. I got called a bootlicker by someone on my social media page yesterday. Oh, well.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Ad hominem attacks don't change facts. And the fact is that Charlie Kirk was not a racist. No matter how many people want to throw out.
It's not a fact. It's an opinion. It's an opinion.
The ad hominem attack that he was a racist. It doesn't make it true. In this video, the guy also says, they didn't celebrate, or they didn't lower the flags for half-staff for Melissa Hortman. Now, not sure if you remember, but Melissa Hortman was the former Speaker of the House, I think, for Minnesota, representative in Minnesota. And her and her husband, back in June, I believe it was, were gunned down outside, maybe at their door. I think somebody came to the door pretending to be a police officer and shot them. I think they also shot their dog. They left kids behind. Tragic, horrible story. Political violence. Horrible. Absolutely should never happen, no matter what someone's viewpoints are. We should not be killed for having a difference of opinion or a difference of worldview. But someone did come down and kill them. But I also think that the reason why this guy is so upset, and the reason why many on the Christian Black left are upset, is because what did Melissa Hortman stand for? She stood for abortion rights. She stood for racial equity. She stood for DEI. She stood for all of the things that were uplifting.
You don't stand for DEI. I can probably understand a little bit of DEI, but racial equity? I mean, you got to break that down for me.
Or liberating, that's the better word, that we're liberating Black Americans. And so if you are not working to liberate Black Americans, you don't deserve to be celebrated. Now, I do kind of see it almost as a false equivalence, comparing Charlie Kirk's death to Melissa Hortman's death, but that's a whole nother story. What I want you guys to understand is that someone like Melissa is seen as a hero because she celebrated the things that really weren't unbiblical. But the Black community—
I don't think that she was celebrated as a hero because of those stances. She, first of all, she was a member of Congress or the state Congress or legislature. Okay, so that's one. And Charlie Kirk said some crazy things. That is the issue. If it was just about Christianity, I don't think that would be an issue. But but he said some really denigrating things towards Black women. And again, when I hear an attack on any Black person's intelligence, I think that that's a racial trope that is done. And I did a screenshot. I did a YouTube, not YouTube. I did an AI chat. Let me see if I can replicate it here. Who has President Trump? This is my history here. Who has President Trump called low IQ? And I think that Gemini popped out something, and there was something like 4 of them. The top 4. Yeah, Charlemagne the God just the other day. Let me see, Gemini. Let me ask Gemini. Who has President Trump? What is this? Who has President Trump called low IQ? Let's see here. Let's see. Share screen here. Right? President Trump has publicly used the term low IQ to describe various individuals, including Kamala Harris, Representative Jasmine Crockett, Charlemagne the God, Representative Maxine Waters, Mika Brzezinski, the co-host of the Emerson, is referred to as low IQ, crazy Mika, and dumb as a rock. Low IQ Mika. Robert De Niro, the actor, was called a very low IQ individual. So Robert De Niro, Mika Brzezinski, and the other ones are all Black or persons of color. He has also at various times questioned the intelligence of others, including figures like Don Lemon, LeBron James, Omarosa, who was in his White House, Manigault Newman, though not always using the exact low IQ phrasing. So, just what are we talking about here? So let's get back to this. Let's finish this off here. Charlie Kirk, racism, Black Charlie Kirk.
Community, especially the Black church, these are the things that they celebrate. And this is why me and Kevin and others come on and we say, don't celebrate this. This is going to lead to death. It is your leaders who are leading you into death. They are leading you to celebrate your grievance. I was in a text message thread with another podcaster, Jason Whitaker. His podcast is the Jay Witt podcast. I would say go check it out. And he made a comment that said they always lead people into grievance. And I'm like, yes, that's such a good way to put it. They are leading people into grievance. Why? Because they are consistently led by grievance. Grievance pays. Keeping people in their grievance keeps them shouting, keeps them in their emotions. It does not lead them into actually doing something for their own betterment, though, because it's always this other person's fault over here. It keeps you in a victim mentality that you actually cannot ever get away from the circumstance that's right in front of you, but that it actually isn't true. And that was Charlie Kirk's message. Regardless of what the circumstance is in front of you, you actually have a way out. And that way out is going to be through hard work. It's going to be through dedication. It's going to be through marriage. It's going to be through saving. It's going to be through following Jesus Christ. If you just apply the biblical principles that scripture outlines for your life, you will have a different life. But that is taboo to say in the Black church because A, it came from a white man, B, it is whiteness or the white Western European way of thinking, and it does not support the narrative that many Black people want to live in, regardless of the fact that only 17% of Black people live in poverty. We keep this grievance narrative going without talking about the fact that 82% of Black people live above the poverty line. Help me understand why working to help move.
Yeah, but what is the poverty line? I mean, just because certain individuals, whatever the poverty line is, and it changes depending on how many people in your household. So let's just say it's $30,000 in a family of 4. If you make $31,000, you're technically not in the poverty line. So is that good or bad? Is that good or bad?
The other percentage of Black people outside of that bondaged way of thinking is so bad because it leads them away from their grievance. Look, I don't know who this pastor is. I don't care who this pastor is. I also don't care about the other ones who are going to come on and tell me how wrong I am and share this and, all of that, whatever. The reality is that you don't have a biblical precedent to do what you're doing, to continue to bind people into their grievance. I struggle to see how we, knowing that Christ frees us, first of all, frees us from our sin, but then as we apply the biblical tenets of scripture to our lives, how he does not free us from other positions as well. And yet, even if he doesn't, even if I stay in poverty or, my life circumstances don't change, am I not still free? Is that not the message of hope that we should still be proclaiming? Instead, we create books, we write books with black fists on them. We collapse all white people into being the same. Well, they're all racist. They're all oppressors. They're all just living from their privilege. If you don't take anything away, because I know I've kind of been all over the place, but if you don't take anything else away from this, take these 3 things. 1, don't fear racism. Don't fear this claim that's everywhere. Everybody's a racist. All white people are racist. Don't do this or you're going to be seen as a racist. If they call you a racist, they call you a racist. And then you can do about it. That does not mean that true racism doesn't exist. But I do see this call of everything being a racist as a big boogeyman in our culture. Be afraid of it. We don't have to live like that. 2, we should be centering Christ and not centering our blackness. What do I mean by that? If you are going to a church where everything is about the color of your skin and the oppression of Black people, and
now here's where I'm going to disagree and may ruffle some feathers, but unfortunately, right? I just bought a book. Let me try to see if I can pull it up here. Amazon. So the problem when you become more Christian than you are Black, there are other people who don't make that separation, and we have to be very strategic in the way that we move. And this is the issue that I have. I don't have a problem with anybody and going to church, being a Christian, religion, spirituality. I really don't have a problem with that. Let me see. That's not Kindle read. But what I have an issue with is forget about being black and just be a Christian. And that to me is problematic because we can't separate those two. And the black church, I don't think, would want us to separate those two. So here's a book that I just let me see. How do I get to this here? I don't want to do that. No, that's not what I want. The Religion of Racist. Amazon. Let's see if this is the book here. Yeah, here it is. All right, let me see here. I just started reading this here, so I can't really give the best analysis of it thus far. But this is called Religion and the Racist Right, the Origins of the Christian Identity Movement. Let me make this a little bit bigger here so you can see it. So this is a book by Michael Barkman, Religion and the Racist Right, the Origins of the Christian Identity Movement. I just started reading it. I'm only in the first chapter here. So, but we're trying to separate this, and we're trying to just be this way, just be a Christian. But other people aren't living this way. Not all of them. I don't even think it's a majority. I think it's, probably 20, 30%. I tend to think of this as along the lines of 20, 30% of 20%, kind of like the Republican, the political parties, right? So, a third of the nation is Republican, a third of the nation is Democrat. I think it's like 29% Republican and 31% are Democrats, something like that. And then the other 40 or so percent, 39, 40% is independents. So I think that the vast majority of people are somewhere in the middle, in particular white people we're talking about, are really right there in the middle, whether they're Christian or not. They're right there in the middle. There's some that are extreme racist and would identify with this Christian identity movement. And then there are some who are holy, remember John Brown and fighting against racism. There are really people out there who really want to fight back against that, right? I just happen to think of it in thirds like that. And that's what I think that, probably the vast majority of people, maybe more than a third, or 30, 40%, 20, maybe even 50%, are really just kind of in the middle, right? Don't really care. Hey, it doesn't really matter to them as long as they have jobs and careers and etc. But that's just my thought about that. But this whole, we got to separate our identity from this. I can't get down from that. I can't get down with that. And I think that's a huge, huge mistake. I think that's a huge mistake. So we'll finish this off here.
And not first and foremost talking about the freedom that comes in Christ, talking about the gospel message, talking about repentance and forgiveness, you might be in the wrong church. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna say you are in the wrong church. You do not want to be in a church that so focuses on any form of liberation theology that it supersedes the gospel. And I would say if you're in a church,
wouldn't the black church say that is the gospel, particularly when you look at, right? So they had slave Bibles, right? And in those slave Bibles, or redacted versions of the Bibles, which has always been redacted and reformed and add additions and subtractions, and people cut things out. Thomas Jefferson had one, and all this other stuff, right? So Thomas Jefferson, I believe, or was it Thomas Paine? One of them had, kept the good sayings but took out the miracles because they didn't think they happened, and all this kind of stuff, right? And then so we get this slave Bible that took out much of the stories of Exodus and Moses, right? Because they didn't want people to focus on liberation and let my people go and things along those lines, right? So and I'm sure that Christians would say, in fact, I have a book. I have a book about theology in the black church and its roots in theology. I can't seem to find it here. But I do have a book about that. The black church, and let's see, hold on. One is a book by Anthony B. Penn, The Black Church in the Post-Civil Rights Era. and Mighty Like a River, The Black Church and Social Reform by Andrew Billingsley. So those are two books, Mighty Like a River, The Black Church and Social Reform, and Anthony B. Penn's The Black Church in the Post-Civil Rights Era. So those are two books that people could read and to try to understand more about Black liberation theology, although, it probably doesn't say it in there, but it talks about, being set free from what's going on here. And to fail to acknowledge that, I think, is extremely problematic.
That's focusing on liberation theology, whether they proclaim the gospel or not, they are wrong in their hermeneutic. They are wrong in their understanding of scripture.
Or could you be wrong?
Lastly, I will say to those who are confused about what to say and how to respond and things like this, I will say, let your life be seasoned with grace and be seasoned with salt. Don't cower back. Don't shrink back. Understand that there are people who have very poor theology, very poor worldviews, and they will continue to spew ignorance and spew hatred until the Lord changes their hearts, until they repent, until they forgive, whatever that is. But you don't have to be afraid of that. You can actually live boldly. And you can call out the error where the error lies. Today, I am choosing to call out the error of the Black church. The Black church is in error, and it has been in error for a very, very long time. And I wish that—
Is the white church doing it right? Is the Hispanic church doing it right? What is the Black church? Who are the Black church? Are they members of the body of Christ?
there were more Black pastors to actually get on social media and say the Black church has gone so far astray. I wonder if it's redeemable. And at the same time, I love so much of what has come from the Black church, things like gospel music and things like that. But even with that love, it would be better.
That's the same racist trope that everybody else was. All Black folks can't do anything, but they can sing and dance and shuck and jive and throw footballs. Okay, all right, that's enough of that. Let's see here. One last thing here. And let me see here. Oh, geez, I didn't mean to close that out. Let me see here. I shouldn't have closed that out. Let's see. Let's go to. Let's go to a lot. What? So this is a group of pastors who are sitting in a church, who are having a conversation in the church. Black pastors speak which leader, right? Speak truth on the Black church, Black culture, and the Black family. All right, let's get to this one here.
No ministry, no organization will rise above its leadership. We got too many folk who are looking at the wrong preachers on YouTube and not looking and listening to the right preachers, the right teachers. Love God, love neighbor. Love God, love neighbor. Love God, love neighbor. Reverence God, respect neighbor. We, as leaders, have become cowards. We run in popularity contests, and they just outscoped us. Our people are uninformed and mostly uninvolved. Black lives matter. Let me say it. I just wish it mattered to Black people.
So one of the things that I am truly glad to do is to give a voice, give the opportunity.
And this guy's called the Biblical Conservative. The Biblical Conservative. Black pastors speak truth in the Black church, culture, and Black family. I'm not going to be able to take too much of this, quite honestly.
For real men of God, men that are doing it right in America, in particular in the Black church, to espouse the truth. We have so many frauds, so many church plants that are going around poisoning the minds of their congregants, poisoning the minds of the sheep of Jesus Christ, if they are sheep, going around preaching this Black liberation theology stuff, preaching this victimization stuff, and all it does is cause these people to be in a perpetual state of victimhood.
Okay, he's the second one to mention Black theology, Black liberation theology. I got to send this to a friend of mine and see if we can talk about this. It's a curious question here.
So when I see real pastors speaking the truth boldly, you know I'm going to have to provide a voice for them on my channel. The latest example is when there's Pastor Smith out of Baltimore and Apostle Tommy Quick, who were at a meeting the Heritage Foundation was having in regards to the Black family. And these pastors did.
The Heritage Foundation, which is considerably right-wing, I find them to be problematic, not because they're right wing, but because too much of they dance too close to the devil in my estimation. Too close to white white racist ideology.
Did not hold back. This is something that everybody needs to listen to. So please listen, share this, because this is a message that a lot of people are not hearing in today's church.
Why haven't more leaders condemned Black Lives Matter for explicitly and openly declaring that their goal was the destruction of the nuclear family? Where is everyone? Apostle Kirk.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I did. Establish that. Once because I certainly would agree that Black Lives Matter, and I think that deceived a lot of people because they didn't take time to actually look closely enough at the organization and what they actually stood for. I think it was a very brilliant move on their part to name it that way, because you become a card-carrying member simply by being Black. And with a heightened atmosphere of racial racism and racial separation, it was a great way to cloud what their real agenda was. Yes. I think that a lot of churches fail to, first of all, look at that. Secondly, I think a lot of leaders were afraid of criticism if they stood against it because it appeared that they were not for racial justice issues. And I think the combination of those two things, one, that it was camouflaged. Secondly, there was such a heightened interest in it in a corporate America. And for most, even local governments and so forth, they were trying to shield themselves by embracing it, that it made it very uncomfortable for men and women that were fearful of losing their own influence by taking the stand necessary to do it.
So, and Pastor Smith, maybe you can speak to this. Was this just a matter, in your opinion, of being passively unaware, or do you feel that there were leaders that were supportive of the mission of destroying the nuclear family?
Thanks for the invitation. I hope I don't offend anybody, but if I do, I do. The reality is Black Lives Matter. Stage one thinking, according to Thomas Sowell. Sounds good, but you don't do stage two. You don't think about what it means, what the outcome is, where do we go from here? And as preachers, we set our people up for stage one thinking because we preach in shout bites. We preach to get an emotional response. We string scripture together to get an emotional response. We don't force our people to think. So the church, big thunder, big lightning, no rain. Got it? Big thunder, big lightning, no rain. The African-American church in America is a coward. The leaders are coward. No ministry, no organization will rise above its leadership. We got too many folk who are looking at the wrong preachers on YouTube. And
I wonder how many folks are in this audience here who are of color.
Looking and listening to the right preachers, the right teachers. When I came into ministry, I was told that our people are uninformed. And came into ministry, I was told that our people are uninformed and mostly uninvolved. Black Lives Matter. Let me say it. I just wish it mattered to Black people.
So often people don't really understand what the purpose of their preaching and their ministry really is. I think they're so often, with the demise of the denominational church and also with the rise of seminary, a lot of people have taken on church as a profession.
I'm going to pause there because Apostle Quick said something.
A rise of seminary. Wow. I don't want to hear what this guy has to say. I don't know. Fast forward, I guess.
Very interesting. Because of the demise of the denominational church. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot.
I definitely think that the denominational church has let people down and they have turned it into a business. That's definitely true.
Recently. Here in America, with the rise of non-denominational churches, and full disclosure, I've been in non-denominational churches for the past 25 years. I grew up a Methodist and a Baptist. I call myself a Metho Baptist. First and third Sundays with Methodist Church, second and fourth Sunday were the Baptist Church. But with the rise of the non-denominational church, I think something has been missed in a number of areas. I think structure and order has been missed because a lot of these churches are based upon the personality of the man that started the church and not necessarily based upon biblical principles and biblical values. Because everything is based upon what particular revelation that particular pastor has, not necessarily based upon proven principles over time. Now, I'm not saying we should have all these denominations. I don't agree with that either. But I think that's something we need to explore, how the non-denominational church has in some ways contributed to the mega churches that we see in America, for sure, as well as to the destruction of what it means, the missional purpose of the church.
Approach it as an affection. It becomes a means of self-support. And as a result, people are simply not getting the word of God purely because people are self-serving in the pulpit. I agree 100% that too often pastors are corrupted by the pulpit. The pulpit gives them visions of aggrandizement, of being superior, of being great, being wanted to be known, well known in the community nationally. And anytime that is your goal, you will compromise truth in order to serve yourself.
Is it your view that that was the reason that they refused? Did they know about this?
I think that ignorance on the one part, because many pastors feel that preaching the gospel is not dealing with cultural issues. They're told that you got to stay in the word, preach the gospel, as if we are unaffected by what goes in our community and our people are unaffected. And in that, they're cowards. I agree 100%. But also, the fact that we that do it suffer their persecution, let us know sometimes that it's not always cowardice, it's convenience, because they don't want our voice to be heard for fear that it may convince those that they lead. To your second question, all of the institutions of America come from the family, from the home, individuals that are born either within or without a family, a covenant family. All of the resources, human resources for every institution come from our homes. If our homes are immoral, if our homes if the people in the homes don't fear God, if they don't know that word, if they don't know God, if they have not been born again, have not received the baptism of the Holy Ghost, those people will feed into the institutions. Those institutions will then do what corrupt people do because they're not born again. So I believe that the institutions are self-serving. I believe that the NAACP, of which I won their Man of the Year, Humanitarian of the Year award back in 2015. I didn't go to receive it because I do not agree with the things that they stand for. So I believe that these institutions are self-serving. I believe that follow the money. If you follow the money, you'll find the motivation.
Okay, so I want to put a pin in that because there were a couple of things that you said, but I want to go back to something you said earlier and give Pastor Smith an opportunity to address this. You mentioned, Apostle Quick, that attacks were coming from within. Those that had the courage to stand up and say, we cannot have an organization attacking a nuclear family, y'all were attacked. PM Smith, I know, Pastor Smith, that you have dealt with this. What does it take to stand up? Can you describe for everyone here, what did those attacks look like? When you take a stand on an issue, a biblical issue, you identify something like this, what does it feel like being attacked from people that are supposed to be aligned with you scripturally, that are supposed to be on your side? Can you tell us a bit about that?
First of all, I want to apologize for sounding angry. I'm not angry. I'm passionate. I don't waste my time. I don't waste my words, and I'll let other people do it. My hero over here started off right. The civil rights movement degenerated into something it was never supposed to be. When I got back to Baltimore from law school, all of the pastors were running community action agencies. And I looked around and I said, well, who's at home? Who's at the church? Who's teaching? Who's pastoring? And it became about money. Do you hear what I'm saying? No longer calling. It was a career. It was a profession. It was a money generating thing. I didn't grow up like that. I had a job. I had a career. I had a profession.
When was it ever not a money generating thing? I'm going to leave it off right there. When was it ever not a money generating thing, right? All the preachers of all of old, of all times, have always done, bring the tithes to the storehouse, bring the sheep, the goats, and even other religions. They got the chickens, the cows, they got the best of everything because they were voice hearers or because they heard from God or heard from on high. Just texting my man, Dr. B. We're probably gonna pick this up and talk about liberation theology. I didn't know that he had an issue with it as well. I grew up. I thought the liberation theology was a pretty good thing. My understanding that MLK was on that mission as well. So we'll pick this up there. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hit me in the comment section. Until next time, everyone, much love and peace. Hit the like button. Thank you so much for being members.